I wanted to touch base with viewers and just update you on my progress and everything. So, this is mostly really an audio recording that's just been illustrated by some clips and visuals, but to keep you up to date. Here's where the Journey Through Twin Peaks video series stands in the spring of 2021 and going forward into next year. The long awaited part 5 about the lead up to season 3 and how that season told its story is now complete and viewable in several different formats. While part 6, a thematic and geographical deep dive into season 3, will probably be published in 2022, hopefully synchronized with the 5th anniversary of that season from May to September, but that depends on how much of a backlog I build up for the time sensitive material that comes before that, so I'll explain that in this video. But first off, part 5. My Journey Through Twin Peaks videos have always been divided into both shorter chapters and longer parts containing those chapters. Part 5 encompasses everything from chapter 29 to 36. This turned out to be my most ambitious video project by a long shot, dipping into hundreds of different source materials, illustrating concepts, events, and narratives that did not have pre-existing visual elements, and stretching out for longer than any other parts. Indeed, one single chapter, chapter 36, The Return, was almost as long as the entire part 1, while another chapter, chapter 35, The Bookhouse Boy, about Mark Frost, one of the co-creators, took me 2.5 months just to edit, which is more than half the time I spent on the entirety of parts 1 through 4. So this, plus my monthly Patreon obligations and the usual day-to-day work and social distractions, even in a pandemic, slowed the whole process down, and that helps explain why I fell so far behind my initial goals. But now it's done. You can view part 5 as its individual chapters on YouTube, on a playlist, or individually, and at some point I'll probably subdivide at least one of those chapters even further, splitting the return chapter into its component parts to be more digestible if the viewer chooses. Meanwhile, I also combined 3 of the linked chapters on David Lynch's collaboration with editor Mary Sweeney into one single standalone on Vimeo. It's titled Dream Souls, and it may be my favorite single video essay I created in 2020. And Vimeo is also where I finally sorted part 5 all into one piece. Well, kind of. The file was so long and complicated that I had to output it in 2 pieces, but you can watch them back to back as one continuous experience on Vimeo. This is especially valuable as I release the chapters out of order on YouTube, saving the more complicated Mark Frost and original series collaborators chapters for last. So this is the best way to really see the whole flow of how the chapters go one into the other. Now, part 6's structure is something I've already explained several times, and I'll link those explanations below rather than cover them extensively again. But I'm looking forward to focusing in turn on Mr. C, Las Vegas, the town, the mythology, etc., as well as exciting topics like some of the more elusive female characters of the season, the legacy of Laura Palmer post-Fire Walk with Me, and Cooper's split into at least 3 rather than just 2 personas. I really want to be able to concentrate on this material as intently as I did with the original Journey videos in 2014 through 15. While I love the results of part 5, the process of creating it was totally chaotic and frustrating. This time I want to complete all of the work before I unveil any of it. In order to do so, I plan to get a lot of other work done ahead of time first to open up that space. So here's how that will work. On my site, as I've done before, I'll have a new schedule titled The Path Back to Journey Through Twin Peaks. Unlike before, I plan to follow the schedule in exact order, no jumping back and forth between different steps, so it should be easier to follow. And front-loading the most time-sensitive stuff should take care of that. I'm going to lay out the path in the broadest terms right now, but you can follow it in much more granular detail, both in that post and on the Twitter threads I'll create to accompany it. I'll also be leaving space for a few interruptions every month, the occasional impromptu review or unscheduled conversation, etc., but for the most part, it's going to follow this schedule tightly. First up will be immediate attention to everything I need to publish by the end of June, plus a couple more long-term tasks that should be manageable, historical context for my Twin Peaks episode guide, and a Mad Men viewing diary. Secondly comes the summer backlog, where I finish everything through September. Thirdly, the 2021 backlog, everything through the end of the year. And finally, ideally months ahead of schedule at this point, the 2022 backlog, where I go project by project, starting with the ones that kick off at the beginning of the year, and stock up that entire calendar. Then, and only then, probably around the end of 2021 or early in 2022, I can use virtually all of my online work time for Journey Through Twin Peaks. I'll do some preparation, craft the whole narration at once, and then edit the individual chapters before I publish anything. Only after that will I tackle some other work that I'd like to do in 2022 if there's time, but no rush on that stuff. So that's the behind the scenes process. Here's what you're going to see on the surface of what's actually being published. Now, keep in mind, some of this work is already complete, even as I'm recording this in April 2021. A Citizen Kane video to mark the 80th anniversary of the classic film this May, with later videos following probably 6 months to a year later, but I had to get something out there for this particular landmark. Mad Men Seasons 4 through 6 viewing diaries every Monday into December, with both parts of Season 7, the final season, waiting until the summer of 2022. 2 new patron podcasts every month. When the Lost in Twin Peaks rewatch wraps up with the finale and Firewalk with me this summer, I'll follow that approach with conversations with other Twin Peaks commentators every month. Public podcasts every other Wednesday until October, when they become weekly, and split into separate streams for the main podcast, Twin Peaks Cinema, and Left of the Movies. I'll also begin reviewing one new release on that podcast every month, and this weekly format will include at least one live-action Star Wars project every month in 2022. A public version of my Lost in Twin Peaks podcast will be split into small daily episodes, covering one Twin Peaks episode a week for almost a year. And again, this is all stuff I've recorded already, so it's just a matter of breaking it into components. That'll be followed by repurposed topics and conversations from Patreon on Twin Peaks. So when the episode rewatch is done, I'll cover the characters and locations and stuff on a more individual basis, and also parse out the conversations I've been having on Patreon. And finally, the main event of 2022, besides the return of Journey Through Twin Peaks, will be a return of my character series, which I began in 2017 before the new season. And I'll update and expand this accordingly. After 5 years of postponement, I think it's finally time to get that one out there. If all else goes well, I'll also resume my Unseen series in the summer of 2022, in which I review a popular movie which I've never seen before from each year of film history. But again, we'll see about that one. Of course, if all this isn't enough or isn't as much interest to you as the Journey series, you can also explore my extensive backlog, over 1,000 pieces, videos, written reviews, TV viewing diaries, visual posts, and all kinds of other work stretching back over a dozen years. It's all highly organized at this point in different directories on the site, lostinthemovies.com. You can also become a patron on patreon.com/lostinthemovies and receive exclusive and or advance access to hundreds of hours of bonus material. Thanks for watching, reading, listening, and otherwise supporting my work.
Starting positions.